Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining this webinar, which is titled Fast Tracking CEE Automotive Mobility Transition in the RRP, meaning Recovery and Resilience Plans, Priorities for Labor, Innovation and Infrastructure. I believe the topic is important. Some of you may know me. I'm Václav Hudák, Vice President or Vice Chair of GLOBSEC. This is one of the series of webinars we are organizing focused on recovery plans, because we believe that this is not only important exercise in terms of national countries and national governments, but is actually something which is all European, and many topics, many issues and priorities are shared by the countries of Central Europe. That's why I'm very happy to see representatives from Czech, Slovak, Polish, Hungarian governments and private sector. We believe that this type of discussions will bring some new ideas and help to enrich the way how our countries are dealing with the issue of the transition in the automotive industry. Maybe just a few words to kind of define the way we look at this area. Obviously, the whole transformation of the automotive industry is driven by climate change, by the global need to cut CO2 reductions in Europe, then defined in the European Green Deal and the agenda which was set by the Commission of Ursula von der Leyen. So the goals and the needs are clear. It's very good to see that key players in the automotive industry are moving in this direction. Almost every day we see new announcements by major OEMs like Jaguar Land Rover, PSA, Peugeot, Citroën, Volkswagen, etc., but also General Motors and others, how they are going to actually start producing only non-combustible engine cars after 2030, after 2035. So the time frame is very short, and private sector is responding very quickly to this challenge and to the new regulatory requirements. Obviously, it's not only about OEMs, it's not only about cars, it's not only about electricity, it's also about alternative fuels like hydrogen, but it's also very much about infrastructure. We cannot drive electric cars without having charging stations, without having batteries. And this is, in particular for Europe, a challenge which we have to face because, for example, in the battery business, as you know, we are very much behind Asian countries, but even United States. So this whole set of issues is obviously something that we believe RRP plans, the Recovery and Resilience plans, should address. As we know, RRPs have two primary goals. One is greening, and the second one is digitalization. Both of them are very relevant for the automotive sector, both in terms of cutting CO2 emissions from transport, but also in terms of digitalizing and bringing more automation into automotive industry. Today's discussion has two parts. We have representatives from public sector, from the relevant ministries, which are also very much engaged in defining and developing the recovery plans. And then the second panel is composed of representatives of private sector, both from OEMs, but also companies which are engaged as infrastructure developers. So we are very happy, and thank you again for joining us for this discussion. We believe that 1.5 hours should be sufficient, but probably 1 hour we will be able to manage. And I would also like to thank Patrik Kryžanský and the Slovak Electric Vehicle Association, SEVA, which is a partner for this event and for the whole cluster of these discussions. And Patrik also lead the second part of our webinar focused on private sector. Thank you, Patrik.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
So, without much ado, I suggest that we move immediately into the first part, and I would like to ask our kickoff speakers to start, and in particular, Deputy Minister of Transport of the Czech Republic, Mr. Jan Sechter, with whom I had the opportunity to meet several times, and it was always very pleasant and very, very professional. Coming from the international arena, having a lot of international experience, I think is very good contribution to making sure that the transformation in the transport in the Czech Republic also takes the best practices from abroad. So maybe Mr. Deputy Minister, if you could start with your introductory words, please.
It's not easy for me to start. Zdravím všechny na GLOBSEC na Slovensko. I very well, but from other point of view, from my diplomatic and from security policy, from my duties in Warsaw or in Vienna in Central European diplomacy. First, Czech Republic plays an important role in automotive industry and related sectors. It's Slovakia and Czech Republic. We are leading states with step-by-step location of automobile industry in last 30 years, and we have long history, more than 100 years. This is due primarily to its exceptional location, good infrastructure, and skilled workforce and tradition. The country is home to 3 key vehicle manufacturers: Škoda Auto, TPCR, and Hyundai, motor manufacturing Czech. And at the same time, it has excellent business opportunities for suppliers, and it's prepared for future, for our leading position, probably in near future, to hold this position in design, in research, in development activities, in whole mobility sector. The Czech Republic has the necessary prerequisites to maintain its position among the leaders of the sector in the future and to become a center of mobility. We have more than 5,000 research and development workers. Approximately 20% of all private investments in research and development are focused in the mobility sector. And the private sector annually invests more than 12 billion in research and development. We have 9 technical universities, more than 25,000 students in the mobility sector, network of excellent university-based research center like CETEC in Brno or CRC, and it's from my point of view very important government-supported initiatives for new trends in mobility. As the biggest industrial sector in the Czech Republic, the automotive industry accounts more than 9% of GDP, 26% of manufacturing, and 25% of Czech exports. 1.4 million passenger cars. I don't know Slovakia more, probably, but more than 5,000 buses were manufacturers in the Czech Republic. Railway industry is outside now our discussion, but this is more significant than we think. Why do I say this? As a result, we as a state are very interested in open or new developments and trends and support this new development and trends in Europe, not only ecological, but also in autonomous mobility, material research and development technologies, and in all areas of science and research related to the automotive industry. We want, and we have the ambition to actively shape the discussion about the development of the automotive industry and transport technology in Europe. This is about European future and competitiveness for whole automotive industry in Europe. On the other hand, I need to say, we are skeptical about voices or member states. They are aiming for fast, revolutionary, super clean mobility now. And in some member states that they want to impose very fast, super clean mobility into EU at any price. They have not produced a single automobile so far, but it is not a topic. First, we should analyze how clean and environmentally friendly is our mobility and transport in Europe today. This is our starting point. Secondly, we shall look at the changes that the pandemic has brought to us in terms of transport and economy and see how our policies can stimulate both development and restart after COVID crisis. I appreciate the release of the new European Commission Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy. It's now discussed among member states and European Parliament, because this strategy can help us to fulfill our goals for transport regarding transition towards carbon neutrality by 2050. This goal has been adopted, but the debate and strategy should stem from conditions how to meet this objective, as we have different starting position. Not only different starting position, but experience, our tradition in automotive industry, Slovakian tradition in automotive industry. And we need very structured discussion with automotive industry. As a part of infrastructure development, we must focus on high quality, reliable and sustainable transport connections. It's not only about vehicles, but infrastructure. Infrastructure is the basis for new smart mobility. Transport digitalization is only possible with merging of all our process with infrastructure development. Especially during the pandemic, we have experienced key role of new technologies and digital tools to ensure transport of goods through closer borders. Smart connectivity and digitalization help us, and also one of the key priorities, not only of the EU, but our other cooperation platforms like 3C initiative and its engagement in a greener and smarter Europe can be transatlantic agenda. It brings synergies with local economies and attract private investment with international financial investors. I believe that the future requires our attention towards environmentally friendly technologies. However, we should have certain flexibility on resources for clean mobility implementations. Very important priorities after COVID are different than before this goodwill to organize our clean mobility in the European Union. The Czech Republic adopted National Action Plan for Clean Mobility in April 2020 with reduced emission, harmful substances and greenhouse gases due to development of alternative fuels in transport, supporting infrastructure and replacement of the vehicle fleet. In our position, we would like to ensure technology neutrality. It's very important for us to be open for new and future developments in transport and not to have all eggs in one basket. The Czech Republic will continue in supporting the development of infrastructure for electromobility, but also other fuels such as hydrogen, which appears interesting, especially in terms of the development of urban public city transport and railway transport and waterways transport. Car manufacturers take clean mobility very seriously with regard to possible sanctions on site for non-compliance with energy and climate commitments. But EU legislation, so expectation should give signals what vehicles to produce, but to stay technology neutral. Okay, we can discuss all this topic in detail. It was not my aim to be here keynote speaker or kickoff speaker, but I am very happy that I can discuss with our friends in this format and we can deepen this topic from my opening short speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Minister. I think you have raised many issues, and certainly a country like Czech Republic, which has a long history of auto industry and is now also one of the key movers in this area within Central Europe, I think has a lot to say. I think I would like to also encourage all the participants in the webinar, whenever you have any questions to any of the speakers, please raise your hand or let me know, because we would like to keep it very much interactive. But let me move now to the next kickoff speaker. This is Mr. Marcin Korolec from Poland, former Minister of Environment and currently President of FPPE. I will practice a little my Polish. FPPE stands for Fundacja Promocji Pojazdów Elektrycznych, which means Electric Vehicles Promotion Foundation, but very dynamic new organization under Mr. Korolec, and with Marcin, we also recently participated in, I think, interesting discussion with representatives of different commissioners who are dealing with energy and mobility, and basically trying to bring to Brussels a message why this region of V4 plus, why is it a little different in terms of energy transformation, and how different European or different plans and strategies of the European Commission should take into account these differences. But anyway, Marcin, thank you for joining us here. And please, if you could give us a view from Poland, including how the recovery and resilience plan in Poland is looking at the issue of electromobility and transformation in the auto industry.
Thank you, Vasil, for those very good words.
I think we cannot hear very well. At least maybe if you come closer.
Thank you, Vasil, for this introduction, and thank you for the invitation for this important meeting. I think we will see quite soon the end of internal combustion engine, and I think the last internal combustion engine car will be sold in Europe in 2035, which is, in my understanding, quite natural date if we are taking seriously climate neutrality by 2050. Then something like 15 years before we need to stop selling internal combustion engine cars. That has quite good macroeconomic argument for, as we will stop import fuels for those cars. In Polish case only, it is around 12 billion euros yearly, which is massive amount of money. But like Jan Schechter precisely described it, that is bringing also set of challenges, especially for the group of countries of Central Europe, as we are the center of automotive industry for Europe. Electric cars have 1/3 parts less. That means that there will be probably less employment and less things to do with them. That is an important point to be remembered. Additionally to that, the added value of electric vehicles lies in batteries and in programmatics, in programming, which is not traditionally part of automotive corporations. Those competences are outside of automotive corporations today. In my understanding, exactly there, battery production, energy management, programmatics should be a point of reflection of this group of countries, of this group of ministers, how we want to develop dedicated skills for our engineers, but also for our employees of factories, because we need a new set of skills, and cooperation between high schools, universities of our region in that area, I think, would be very important. That is the first point. Second point, traditional dilemma between which should be first, charging infrastructure or EVs, chicken and egg question. In my understanding, creation of a network connecting capitals of V4 or V4 plus with a fast charging network would be a good example for rest of Europe. I know that the Slovak company Greenway is working very hard in Poland, and we are very proud of their presence and performance. But I think as a common goal, connection of our capitals could work against traditional range anxiety of EV users. That was the second point. Third point, in my understanding, administration of V4 should have a common or similar level of promotion of EVs, because I think the kind of EVs in that part of Europe will be different than in other part of Europe. Our societies are less rich, more modest, and that's why developing a kind of standard support scheme would also help industry to deliver cars for this EVs for this part of Europe. And I think here about fiscal incentives, but also about direct support scheme. Talking from the Polish experience, I don't know how it is in other countries, but probably quite similar. I'm personally quite afraid about the potential wave of second-hand, very cheap second-hand cars coming to this part of Europe as a result of massive promotion of electric vehicles in electric cars in richer part of Europe, because that phenomenon will freeze the transition and transformation of the fleets of Poland. Probably that is a similar case in Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary as well. Poland is the bigger country, so numbers are bigger, but the phenomenon is probably quite similar. And in that specific point, I think during discussions of ministers in June, when they will decide about Fit for 55, the proposal coming from this part of Europe saying, listen, richer part of Europe, if you are promoting EVs, think about super bonus for those who are buying EV will also scrap an old internal combustion engine, because they will not evaporate. They will come to Poland, to Morocco, to Ukraine, or elsewhere, or to Romania. So let's talk with them, do your work, promote EVs, but not allow them to come to other countries, to less rich countries. And the last point, also in a perspective of June Council meeting and European discussions, I am personally strongly against introduction of emission trading scheme in transport sector. I think that is a counterproductive idea, which will not solve any trouble, and I think that is simply not to be introduced. That is my last point in this introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcin, and also thank you very much for some very interesting ideas. I think the idea of developing a fast charging network for EVs among the capitals of V4, I would say V4 plus, would be, I think, excellent initiative. It's probably something for the 3Cs Initiative Fund, for example, to take upon itself. But I think this would be great to also for the people of the region to be able to move in a clean way among our countries. I think the idea of kind of super bonus for the replacement of internal combustion engine cars by electric vehicles would be something that would certainly encourage people to go in this direction. And I agree with you that I think there is this danger of central or some parts of Central Eastern Europe being a kind of dumping spot for the ICE cars from Western Europe. So these are all real issues, and this is exactly what this type of discussion under GLOBSEC and this kind of webinar should be able to address. So thank you very much for this. Now I would like to move to our next speaker, Tomáš Kakula. Tomáš is Director General for Competition at the Ministry of Economy of the Slovak Republic. Obviously, this ministry is very close to my heart, as I used to be the minister in this institution. But Tomáš, please, what's the view from the Slovak side?
Yeah, good morning. I shall say minister because once you were my minister. So hello everyone to my former bosses and maybe future bosses and all who are listening to us. Thank you for invitation. It's very pleasure to speak on this topic with you. I would like to connect to my pre-speakers, and in few minutes I would like to frame our position, our national position. Well, no surprises here, I guess. And next, I would like to say something on the topic because the topic was framed around RRF, so maybe somebody would be interested what we actually in the RRF and maybe elsewhere. So as regards to the first point, framing the position, probably as our Polish and Czech friends, we were, well, fighting on the same part of the barricade, for instance, when negotiating the CO2 regulation for new cars and vans for at 2030. And well, we used many words that were already spoken for, like technological neutrality, which is in our opinion must. And we were also trying to explain to our friends more in the western part of Europe that if there will be a massive electrification, this could lead to let's say dumping the ICE cars in the eastern part of Europe, which where once they become very affordable, and since we don't have any special policies to stop this notion, this could happen very easily. But and let's say on this position or on this file, we were in, I would say, conservative part of the spectrum, advocating for not, as let's say, super fast and super green transition, but really a transition that will be acceptable and that will be adopted by users and by industry, which is, I think, the main point here. So we are aware that we have to do all this, but we don't need to, or we don't have to shoot ourselves in the foot by over rushing. So we have to be we have to have the public and the industry sector on our side. So this is a few words on where we stand, and maybe now what we do. As you may know, or probably many of you don't, under the RRF, the Resilience and Recovery Fund, we have a specific component which is sustainable mobility, and within the component, Ministry of Economy is responsible for alternative fuel infrastructure deployment. To be more specific, there is a budget of 50 million dedicated for establishing a network of mainly EV charging points, but we are also looking into the hydrogen, which has, in our opinion, also plays in the future mobility, especially long-haul cargo and so on, maybe in railways. So within this budget, we are proposing at the moment building or setting up a network of more than 3,000 EV chargers. We were in discussion with the European Commission on also different infrastructure for different alternative fuels, for instance, CNG, which is still the most viable alternative, for instance, for trucks and buses, but this was unfortunately for us not allowed, so we will stick to the EV infrastructure and hydrogen. So this is as regards the RRF. And elsewhere, we are also as a country active in the field of batteries and hydrogen. As you may know, there is a possibility for countries to place or to propose a project in so-called IPCEIs. Here we have 4 companies that were granted the IPCEI title, and that will be, well, we are currently trying to find the public funding to support this very innovative and very future-looking projects. The projects are, except for the excavation in the whole value chain of the batteries. And on hydrogen, the talks are still going. The Slovak Republic will propose no less than 15 projects in the first stage of the hydrogen IPCEIs, and future will tell how many of those will be granted the IPCEI title. We hope that will be a lot of them. Some of them are also in the field of infrastructural projects. And maybe my last point on this topic, as you may know, we are trying also to, let's say more general, we are also trying to improve the business environment overall, which is sometimes one of the crucial points on deciding for businesses to invest. So let's not forget about this. There are many activities which either our ministry or different ministries are currently doing or having in the pipeline. So in our case, I will not go into much details, but we are mainly focusing on cutting red tape and let's say improve the overall quality of business environment, which is definitely one of, well, is the prerequisite for companies to be allowed to expand and invest. So I will maybe stop here, and if there are any further questions, I'm ready to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomáš. It's great to see that there is an allocation within the resilience and recovery plan for EV charging points, as you mentioned, 50 million euros. I was hoping for more, but even this is better than nothing. And then also it's very good you mentioned the IPCEI projects, meaning important projects of common European interest, because I believe this is also a good opportunity for the companies in Central Eastern Europe to come up with projects which can access more state support or bigger proportion of state support than otherwise possible. And it's a way how to deploy quickly the EV infrastructure and EV-related projects. So thank you very much for this, and I would like to move now to Brussels. Well, Brussels, extended hand of Brussels in Bratislava, in Slovakia. Mr. Zdeněk Čech is head of the Economic Analysis Department in the representation of the European Commission in Slovakia, but always looking also at the whole region. So maybe how does Brussels look at this whole transformation process, in particular in Central Eastern Europe, and what maybe your expectations from the Brussels side are for RRP, for the recovery plans in terms of transport? Please.
Thank you very much for invitation and for a great introduction. I mean, of course, the expectations of Brussels are really big, on the process. For us, the recovery plan, it's a flagship project, and I really liked Mr. Kakula's presentation, and I'm really glad that Slovakia is going in the direction of supporting e-mobility. I have a couple of slides to visualize the issue. I will try now to sorry, I'm trying to now sorry, it does not sorry.
And is the share screen enabled?
I'm just trying, but I mean, it does not appear to me my PowerPoint that I just tried just before. That I just tried just before the.
It's frozen.
It's not frozen, but I mean, let me. I can do without the. Now it's that it appears now. Sorry. Can you see it now, please?
Yes. Yeah, we can.
Okay. Okay, so I just have a couple of slides, and indeed, this is very, very topical for the region as automotive, and also for us, it's a really big challenge for the Commission administration, also for the national administration. So I'm really glad that you are talking about this, and I will tell you something on the Slovak perspective, and something some background from the economic analysis that we have on Slovakia and the region. And the second, I will tell you something on update where we stand in terms of the recovery plan process. So for you, I mean, it's not surprise, that if you put, Slovak economy into Google, that something comes out like this, that you see the automotive sector. Slovakia is really big in terms of the automotive sector, the same Czechia. Slovakia, in terms of the cars produced per inhabitant, is nearly 3 times bigger than Germany. So it's really something that is extraordinary. Czechia slightly behind. The second element that I put regarding the Slovakia, it's in the left lower corner. I will come back to this. It's a relatively high degree of robotization of the processes in industry, and especially in the automotive. I mean, I will come back with some surprising slides in the next step. And the third point is in the right upper corner. This is, I mean, this is kind of showing the European project, but we must underline that Slovakia is not really the best member states in terms of the drawing on EU resources. I mean, the data for the end of 2020 are showing that Slovakia is around only 40% for drawing the last multi-annual financial framework 2014-2020. So we are already in overtime, and Slovakia was in somewhere withdrawing at around 40% only, so which was one of the last actually positions among the member states. So this is, I mean, as Mr. Hudák mentioned, the challenge of transformation to the low carbon economy. Then we have robotization, automatization, and we have also challenge of.
Excuse me, can I interrupt you? We just see the first slide only. Can you?
Sorry.
Roll down. Okay, thank you very much.
Now, can you see now the second slide, please? Can you see the cars now?
Yes.
Yes. And now, can you see the third slide? Can you see the chart?
Not yet.
I don't know what is happening here now.
No.
Can you see now the chart?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I will keep it with this. Okay. So then I mean, the automotive in Slovakia is really big, and now actually what is the forecast? Our forecast for Slovakia for the years ahead. Slovakia actually dropped GDP. Our estimation now for last year is minus 5.9, and there will be slow. I mean, some recovery towards 2021, and with improving pandemic situation, a stronger recovery in 2022. Actually, it's a good news that actually Slovakia. I mean, this is on the right panel, where we see it is actually in the right panel that Slovakia will already recover to 2019 levels already by the end of this year, ahead of most EU member states. And actually, this is thanks to the strong rebound in industrial output. You know, we saw in Q3 strong industrial output, and I assume this is also coming from the automotive sector. And actually, in December, industrial output in Slovakia was up by 6.8% year on year. I mean, this is extraordinary, and we also need to look. I mean, this is the Eurostat data. This was actually the strongest number for industry across the EU. I mean, Poland was the second, and this is actually transformed to the Q4 estimate of Eurostat for Slovakia. That Slovakia recorded the lowest, the lowest GDP contraction among the Visegrad 4, only minus 2.7 in Q4. So actually, the bottom line is that actually the industry was very resilient. I assume also the automotive. And the Slovakia will be back on track by the end of this year or early in 2022. Okay, there are 2 lost years in terms of the growth, higher debt levels, but actually Slovakia is well positioned, you know, to recover. That said, of course, we have a very high uncertainty and related to significant risk, pandemic developments, rollout of vaccination, how this will go, but with a significant inflow of EU funds, Minister Heger is assuming 3% of GDP for this year, 3% for next year, and 7% for 2023. This is the really huge inflow, and if this is managed well, you know, that Slovakia, I'm rather bullish on the Slovakian industrial and the economic outlook. And if I come back, you know, to automotive, you know, we can see here 2. Hopefully, you see it. Please shout if not. We see here 2 charts that I quite like. It's from our study that Commission did about 1 year ago, and it is actually showing, you know, distribution of industrial robots by sector. This is the left panel, and you see Slovakia. That actually predominantly industrial robots are concentrated in automotive. This is not surprise. This is the yellow bar in the left panel. And then you see actually the robot density in car manufacturing. And this is showing that Slovakia is actually robotization leader. I mean, these are a bit older data. This is from 2016, but I think that there is still some momentum to it. And you see that Slovakia at that level was, for instance, saw really big growth, much bigger than, for instance, regional member states, ahead of France, and not that far away beyond Germany. Robot density is showing, you know, the number of robots per 100,000 employees, you know. So you see that actually Slovakia is very much penetrated in the car manufacturing by industrial robots. So this has, of course, implication for economic policy, and also it has implications for the recovery plan. That I'm coming to it in a minute. And in terms of the recovery plan, I can tell you, I can update you where we stand with Slovakia. For Slovakia, we have a grant allocation of around 6 billion euros. I mean, loans are also possible. And maybe as a Commission, we are in the ongoing dialogue with the Slovak authorities. And we, as a Commission, we are trying to make sure that there is alignment with of the plan that is being prepared with legislative requirements as set out by the Recovery and Resilience Facility regulation that was actually that came into force on the 19th of February, quite recently. And as Mr. Hudák said, you know, the reforms and investments are concentrated into the green and digital transition. Automotive, the clean mobility. I mean, there is a flagship recharge and refuel Slovak allocation, as was just now mentioned, is also going to this, and rightly is going into this direction. But I want to also say that as you saw the charts on robotization, I think that equally important is education and skills, because you need somehow to serve the robots. And also the automotive industry needs also other things like circular boost to the circular economy, etc., etc. So I think that actually there is still some room, to fine tune the plan, and I'm really glad that Slovak authorities are going ahead with this. So I mean, in terms of this dialogue, we had a first draft submitted by the Slovak authorities already in December. Now, I mean, early this week on 8th of March, we received the second draft update. And the plans are, as a general rule, are supposed to be submitted by the 30th of April to the Commission, and then we will work on the assessment. And if everything goes well, then actually there is a proposal by the Commission on Council implementing decision. Council approves, then we go to the markets, we borrow some resources, and actually prepayment of 13% of this grant allocation of this 6 billion euros to Slovakia is already possible by the end of summer, and hopefully that actually. But the most important thing is that actually the plan will get right the important challenges that actually we discuss, and then there is still 2 months time, and this will be the heavy time for the Slovak administration, and with Commission we are trying to help to make sure that actually we align the plan with the legislative requirements, and actually that the money will start to flow as soon as possible to the Slovak economy, and that actually the not only investments and the reforms will kick off as soon as possible and will contribute, to the post-pandemic recovery. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cech. So on behalf of Vasil Hudak, thank you so much. He had to excuse himself, but the points were excellent, and also clearly wraps up the first part of the public sector kickoff, where we can see country-specific strengths and challenges, let's say, but also clearly some comprehensive regional common endeavors we can embark on. Kindly would like to introduce Patrick Gizanski, director from SEVA, for the second part. So Patrick, please.
Thank you, Ferdi, and thank you to Vasil as well. We heard the opinions of public sector, and as agreed, we would like to discuss also the view of the private sector. And just to remind you, we want to keep this as an open discussion. So if you have a question, just don't hesitate to raise your hand and then ask live, or if you're just shy, write the question in the chat. Well, I think we all agree that the focus of decarbonization in the EU, in the transport particularly, is a reality. This also translates into changes in regulation, dominantly also in technology, and then driven by these two factors, the private and public investment is quite visible towards decarbonized mobility. I would like to remind to the audience that it's not only about recovery fund when we speak about regulation. There's a EU Fit for 55 package coming with several revisions of regulations, maybe just to list a couple of them. Regulation on CO2 emissions in passenger cars and light commercial vehicles. Then also of course, a revision of AFID, which is a big thing for entire alternative fuel industry. Not to forget about regulation on batteries. So we see clearly that the shift is dominantly towards the electrification of the transport. This includes not only electric vehicles, but also electric railroads. So let me ask the private sector, how well the recovery plans in the CEE region reflect these challenges. I've got 3 distinguished guests with me today. The first one is Peter Sadowski, who actually represents the Slovak Bus Transport Association. Then I would have also Rado Markuš from ZSE as the e-mobility director. ZSE is the biggest utility in Slovakia. And also from the Western Europe, I would have Koen Noens, the director of EU policy of EV Box, and also he represents Charge Up Europe as the chair of the policy committee. So firstly, before the discussion, I would like to ask Mr. Sadowski for his short intervention. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I hope you can hear me. Yeah. Is it too loud or not? Is okay?
It's fine. Thank you.
Good, good. Because each speaker is speaking somehow different voice. Thank you for giving me a speech. Yes, it's very important to hear what the private sector is saying, and let me give you some ideas to give you more to think. It does not always have to fit to the speeches before or to policies, but I think that this is the purpose of discussion, to hear also different opinions, so to get a feedback from the private sector. So I'm a representative actually of the road transport, but you will not hear me to hear only about the private transport or about the road transport. Actually, I was quite close to RRF and its preparation in Slovakia, and I was one who was also promoting and talking about the rail being the not really the future, but being the green way of transport. On the other hand, the outcome of the RRF is not that what I would really believe is the right way to go. Because the first proposals which they came from the Ministry of Transport, I consider rather the liquidation of the investment debt rather than development and the way ahead. So for road transport, we did not find very much, unfortunately. When I should answer to your question in the RRF, we are burdened by the thinking about the diesel, and the road is always considered like something which is more dirty than the other things, and making the emissions and so on and so on. There's a lot of arguments to offer a different angle to look at this problematic. For instance, the emission classes which developed in the car industry. Now we will have Euro 7. You might know that the emissions went dramatically down, and it like in an exponential way. So already Euro 6 is very, very friendly to environment. When we talk about the green mobility and the RRF, I have a second point is that besides the rail, I do not see very much space for other alternative fuels like CNG, LNG, LPG, and so on. We talk too much about the electromobility, but there are also other ways how to save environment, which are more technologically advanced. And I have the impression that the electromobility is somehow politically driven and put in the front of all movements, which does not automatically mean that this is the best transport mode for the future in the long term, from the long-term point of view. So I'm missing the space for other alternative fuels. Maybe a few more aspects. We have to realize that electric is also expensive. So some electric vehicle or electric bus is, for your information, 2.5 or maybe 3 times more expensive than a diesel bus, whereby CNG bus is just a very small difference to the diesel bus. So We will not move to electromobility cheaply. We will hardly move bigger scale without the subsidies or without the support, but this support can be endless if we want. It just depends on the speed, how quickly we want to replace diesel by electricity or other means. So we have to realize it will be expensive. So if we buy electric vehicles, maybe we would buy less diesel vehicles, and therefore we will have old vehicles with old large emissions. Everybody has to realize this. So this is the other side of the coin. But I'm quite happy that we have this hydrogen movement, sort of movement in Slovakia, and the Ministry of Economy is supporting the development of hydrogen and also putting the money into this. I cannot say that hydrogen is the really future, maybe in the longer haul distances, but it's good that in Slovakia we are thinking ahead and trying to look at something which has a chance in the future to be a pioneer, to be in the front of everything. So thank you, Ministry, and I hope that your attempts will be successful. What else to say? I am also a little bit disappointed is not the right word, but I think that the cycling is, for instance, in RRF getting somehow a big space unexpectedly, actually, because this was not there or in such a scale from the beginning. I mean, it's a good alternative way of transport, but not everywhere. We are quite far from benchmarks in Western Europe. And I'm just afraid that now, again, we are concentrating in Slovakia on something which sounds good. But the question is whether this will be a good value for money in a given period of time. Maybe we could do more in a road transport, which is, by the way, still the main way how to move the goods and the people in Europe. And to be a devil's advocate a little bit now and to give some ideas to think and to talk and to discuss about is the fact that we talk about the support of rail, about the multimodal support, but you know what is the statistics over the many years in Central Europe. In spite of these policies, which are there also for many years, the result is that share of the road transport in transport is still growing and is growing. So we do something wrong. Not only us in Slovakia, but in European Union, we do something wrong. So maybe the way forward would be to more pragmatical, more practical, less political, less wishful thinking. Maybe more work together with the associations like us, defining the ways to go forward in the future, and to look at the customer and the costs, of course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this first intervention, and I will leave this for later debate or discussion. Just one thing which came to my mind, and maybe some coordinated joint procurement, of number of transport companies could be a message to decrease the price and particularly price per item. But I'm pretty sure that Rado Markus from ZSE will have his view on the decarbonization and electrification of the transportation. And just to remind you, the example of Slovakia's recovery plan, we would have like 12% of money or budget going to sustainable transport. Most of that goes into railroads, which is, I think, very good. And about 1% of the budget goes into EV charging infrastructure. And I think this is actually a very good message for Rado Markus, who actually represents utility, which actually deploys the charging infrastructure. Rado, floor is yours.
Colleagues, good afternoon. Thank you very much also for the invitation to this very interesting discussion, and I think very, let's say, important discussion before the RRF will come on the place. on the table. Probably knows that ZSE is part of the E.ON group, so very, let's say, huge energy company in the Europe, at least in the Europe. I would like to say that it was discussion and some, let's say, mentioning from the Mr. Sadowski that if e-mobility or electric vehicles are the right one for the future, I just would like to say that probably many of us, we are not, let's say, discovering wheels. Yeah, we are, let's say, continuing what automotive industry and the expert engineers will bring on the table. What is the most efficient, let's say, transportation or the change of the energy to the kinetic energy and so on. And it seems to be that battery and charging of the cars, electric cars, are now number one, at least for the next decade or 2 decades. There is no competitive alternatives what we can use, at least in the individual transportation. So this is my first, let's say, some sides to this discussion, that if there will be something very significant what we can use at the moment and to bring on the table like applicable instrument for reaching the KPIs of CO2, definitely national, let's say, countries or national economies will do. I would like to also share with you, let's say, our private experience with the infrastructure business, because this really is question chicken and egg. What will be the first? And you know that we are far away with comparison of Western European countries with the deployment and with the number of electric cars. And that's why also in history we decided to look at some supporting programs. We were very successful in Connecting Europe Facilities instrument from the Brussels. We as a company, we are also successful in PCI project like ACON and maybe INGRID, which will definitely help to improve the grids and the energy needs for the electric mobility rollout. I would like to share with you some slides, only for maybe 1 minute, to describe that what we've done already and how this will fit with future rollout, and also with the sources which should come from recovery fund, and definitely can help Slovakia to improve the position in this case. So let me share. I believe that this will work. Tell me, you see it?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, super. So this is, let's say, our history. We started with the like more intensive deployment activities in 2014, where we were, let's say, part of the FASD project. It was also very, let's say, unique project connected with the Dutch company Allego on the western side of the Europe, and together with Czech colleagues, we deployed first fast chargers in Slovakia. Then we were, let's say, more successful with more skills, more experiences. What comes to, let's say, final result, and it is we are at the moment active in 3 others projects: ESTI, NEXTI, and Urbani. I will mention probably only NEXTI. This is one of the largest e-mobility project ever, what was, let's say, selected and granted from the Brussels, with a total budget more than 22 million, and covering six countries in the CEE region: Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Slovenia, Croatia. There are also 6 very important partners or group of the partners. In my experience, it was the first project where we met with like competitors in this case from the oil and petrol business, with the group MOL and the Petrol, Hungary and Slovenian companies. From the energy, there is group E.ON representing Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania, but last not but least is also the Croatian energy company HEP. All of them we are supporting by 2 automotives. This is the BMW and Nissan. What I would like to show here, that also in the history we didn't sleep. We do this, let's say, first footstep with the deployment of infrastructure. Thanks of these, let's say, grants, we were able to do it. Because this is again chicken egg problem. If we should, let's say, deploy something and invest money, we are also asking where is the business? Where are those, let's say, electric cars? Where are those passengers and so on? So this is something what I will tell in the second part of my speech, that this is still missing some sustainable, complex subsidy or support from the state, from the national, let's say, some scheme. As you can see on this picture, we were able directly manage as a coordinator or as a partner the deployment of more than 500 charging stations in the CEE region, what is quite, let's say, good success. And I believe that this will come and this will continue also in the recovery fund, which can bring on the table additional money to support the deployment. I will switch off this. Okay. Now, what is the important for the future? So we have in Slovakia, for example, I can say precisely, I don't know the results and figures from other countries. So in details, we have several hundreds public charging stations or public charging points. I would say that this is quite, let's say, maybe nice number, but comparing to the existing number of the cars and future, let's say, plans, what should be visible on the market, this is still not enough. We are speaking that we have only several tens of the ultra fast chargers, what is the most important part of the charging activity on the highways, on the let's say movement from the point A to point B. And we are also very slowly with deployment in urban mobility. So the most important when the car is not, let's say, moving, when it's staying in the garage or in a fleet of the employers, is something where Slovakia must speed up. We are also, let's say, looking for in the future for some standardization of this technical and communication requirements, which will, let's say, stabilize the system, where we can say that, okay, this is definitely public charging station, which is recognized also from the Slovakia, but also from abroad. The customer which will come here will have no problem to find it, to use the connector without any, let's say, specification of the operator and so on. So there is a lot of job what is needed to do in CEE region. It's also crossing to the Western European, let's say, legislation or this new industry. We as an operator of the CPO and but also on the side of MSP, so we are building infrastructure, we are also providing the services on this infrastructure. Still, let's say, suffering or facing the problem with VAT. We still don't know precisely we are selling commodity or we are selling the service. Yeah, e-mobility in the end is very complex solution and the service. I really believe that this is the service and not the commodity. But if you would like to provide this type of service abroad, you have always question mark what you are selling and how the VAT will look like. So there are many questions which Europe, Brussels, and the European Union must take on the table and decide or making standardization, new rules for this industry. So this is absolutely important for the future. Back to the recovery fund, and I will finish. I think this is the unique, absolutely unique opportunity to speed up the process of the deployment infrastructure. I believe that this will have some, let's say, logical rules where to put the infrastructure, how, let's say, technically equipped with parameters, differentiation between the highways and between the cities. And I will be very happy to see after this, let's say 4 or 5 years, that there will be no barrier or no, let's say, fear from the side of end user to say that, okay, we still see some fear or some problem with using electric vehicle, because we think that the infrastructure is not, let's say, deployed in such a manner what we asking or appreciating before. So I believe that this will dramatically improve all of countries around in CEE region. Definitely, I can speak about Slovakia. That it's something what we need.
Okay, thank you for this intervention. We actually heard a lot about CEE region. Well, we are mostly representatives of CEE region view, but with us, Koen Noyens, his view is a view of Western counterpart, because he actually represents EVBox, a large operator of the charging infrastructure, and also he represents the Charge Up Europe, which is a recent initiative based in Brussels, which actually lobbies or promotes sustainable electric transportation, and more precisely charging infrastructure. Koen, would you maybe share with us some thoughts, based on your views of more developed market? Floor is yours.
Yes, happy to do so. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Also, thank you for setting up this very important, interesting forum. I learned already a lot today, I must say. So indeed, I'm calling in from Brussels. I'm sharing the policy work for EVBox. Indeed, we're a hardware manufacturer operator, active actually not only in Western Europe. We're active globally, including in the Central Eastern European member states. So we actually have charging stations deployed in every single European member state. We have actually an office in Warsaw from where we coordinate our Central Eastern European activities. At the same time, as you said, I'm active as chair of the policy committee in Charging Europe, and indeed that's the voice of the infrastructure players, of which also, for example, Greenway is a member, and we are trying to actively promote the interests of the EV charging infrastructure players, which are growing in number across the EU. Let me start by indeed saying what we stand for as a company, but also as an association. Picking up on some of the conversations that we just had, what we really promote is well the electrification of transport from passenger cars to trucks as let's say the most cost efficient and the most energy efficient way to decarbonize the transport sector. So for all types of vehicles, and this is not something that we are pleading for. It's also something that we see happening in reality. It's where we see, let's say, the shift from a policy-supported market towards now actually a technology-driven market. I can give you an anecdote from a story I picked up yesterday, which is about, let's say, commercial vans, which are being deployed today in the urban areas, for example, of Amsterdam. And it's, for example, beer distributors who need to get access to downtown city areas, who are massively shifting towards commercial trucks, electric trucks and vehicles. So it's no longer a long distant future. It's something that is happening on the ground. And obviously there has been some massive growth in countries like the Netherlands, but we see that shift happening elsewhere. So what do you want to convey is indeed that well, technology will drive the shift. You see this also being recognized, acknowledged by larger OEMs, Volvo, Volkswagen, GM in the States, and others. They're shifting strategies, and what I call the big ships, they're somehow indeed turning, and with that you also see cost coming down. So the cost factor is an important one, and also for, let's say, the Central Eastern European region. One way or the other, eventually the total cost of ownership will decrease and will be better off than the ICE cars today on the market. When we look at the broader e-mobility transition over the long term and what needs to be done today in order to, let's say, get the transition going, as infrastructure players, we see, let's say, a broader infrastructure challenge, to be honest. So it's something that's a challenge that is present not only in the Central Eastern European region, but also in the Netherlands and in other, let's say, Western European countries. And that's a fact, the challenge to deploy and to further scale up, while at the same time you have a lot of private investors, the Greenways, the EV boxes of this world, who are ready to massively scale up and to further roll out. So the question really is, what is holding back investment? And I have 2 points that I want to make, two important points. And one indeed relates to, well, I think Radoslav just pointed out one of them, which is the VAT issue, which is something that, funny enough, we were discussing yesterday with the European Commission. As EVBox, we're also doing, let's say, business across the EU. And this is just one aspect, the fact that you don't have uniform market rules in place on VAT, on hardware, on metering, on interoperability, on accessibility. These are all, let's say, things that are dealt with locally. And we don't have, let's say, what we call a single European market for EV infrastructure. So the revision that you mentioned, Patrick, the revision of the AFIT, the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive, is we're gonna push and try to basically make sure that we get more harmonized, uniform rules established, so we can actually get, let's say, the scaling up in a faster way, so that we can address the market fragmentation that is holding back investments one way or the other. So that is one aspect, and Brussels will deal with this, and Brussels will hopefully eventually solve these kind of, let's say, fragmentation issues. But at the same time, well, I know Brussels, many of you know Brussels, well, Brussels is a bit slow, and these rules eventually will be put in place. But then we're talking 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And that actually brings to the second point. Today, we want to invest as infrastructure investors already. So how do we make sure that we can cater for the transition starting today, and that we can also somehow address the EV drivers' needs? Although even if the markets are small, how do we address potential EV consumer concerns? And that goes obviously beyond the fixing of the rules. And that basically is looking at the RFF in the short-term opportunity to boost investments. And this is not only important for investors and for consumers to allocate, let's say, to allocate funding and to send a clear policy signal that basically, well, we somehow believe and trust the transition and this is going. It is also somehow by looking at, let's say, the broader economic and welfare picture. It's about, well, where does transitions happen? There's a transport transition, but there's also an energy transition taking place, and eventually across the EU, while electricity somehow is everywhere, you see that we're moving towards an electricity system which will be much more renewable based, much more, let's say, based around flexibility. And that's where basically the synergies come in between, let's say, the transport side and the energy side, and where the mobile batteries, smart with investments that are needed for that, somehow can tie it up all together and can really, let's say, create powerful economies. And I think the RFF should not be underestimated here, and really should, let's say, gear towards making sure that you put in place the right infrastructure investments, which eventually can, let's say, hit many birds with what I call one stone. Well, I see that you want to, let's say, stop me, so I'm trying to wrap up my point. So indeed, this is what I wanted to somehow say, that well, this is that we're conveying the message that this is a moment to grasp. It's an important moment to grasp. Synergies are there. Infrastructure players are ready. It's not just us, EVBox. We have done this also with Charge Up Europe. We're also active in the e-mobility platform, which is not a broader constellation. Many different industry players are actually pushing for, let's say, smart, future-proof, and market-oriented criteria for these REF funds. So let me stop there. I've been talking quite a bit already, but well, what you can hear from me is that, well, we call on governments and ministries to let's say, to focus on the right investment in infrastructure.
Good. Thank you for this intervention. I think we had really many ideas and good ideas, kind of translated today to a few interventions, and I need to open the floor for the discussion for the audience. I'm sure there will be several questions, but let me just summarize this discussion or interventions by a big battle, which actually I think started a couple of days ago in Brussels, where there is a battle between those that actually favor still the old traditional fuels and kind of slower transition, and between those that actually kind of claim that the internal combustion engine kind of is fading, and then there's the death of ICE cars. And I'm sure that you all actually noticed that the battle actually went on yesterday with the 9 countries claiming that we need to set a real good time plan for finishing the combustion engine. But please, we have a couple of minutes for discussion. Don't hesitate to ask or raise hand and pose the question. And don't be shy. Aaron, Aaron Fishburne, do you want to say it directly, or should I read it?
I can say it directly. Hi, hello, my name is Aaron Fishburne. I'm with Greenway, also with Charge Up Europe, and I'm in Bratislava right now. Also very active on this portfolio at the European level and also at the member state level here in Slovakia and Poland. And we have contributed to 2 reports, one from the Platform for E-Mobility and also one from Charge Up Europe, as I can just mention, both of which are directed towards both member state governments and also the European Commission Task Force on the Resilience Funds, about how to look at electrification and e-mobility in their recharge and refuel flagship proposals. And in particular, as sort of Kun mentioned at the end, how they can do so in a way to make sure that it's very long-term, looking toward using this investment moment now, the funds that will flow from Europe now, in order to make critical investments that will enable the system, both the mobility system and the energy system, to function well and together into the longer term. And so these are both short reports I just wanted to mention for everyone to be able to look at and see in writing. And they are endorsed by many industry players who are the members of the 2 organizations. They're both official position papers from each association, one of which is the Industry Association for Charging Operators. And then the other is a broader consortium of stakeholders in the broader electrification ecosystem, from energy generators and utilities all the way to the Teslas and to the Allegos of the world. So I think these are really good and short reports to help especially people in government think about how their plans and their proposals and how they can really use this moment to make really smart, strategic and longer term investments.
Anybody of the speakers wants to comment this? Don't be shy. No? Oh yeah, Ferdi, go ahead. No, sorry, Samuel Mishik, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the floor. Just a short comment from my side. I'm Samuel Mishik from the Finance Ministry. I'm a project manager that's working on our component for sustainable transport within the RRF. I just wanted to briefly come back to what Mr. Sadowski was saying, and just highlight that while unfortunately we weren't able to include everything that certainly is necessary to green the transport sector in the RRF, and that includes, for example, other alternative fuels rather than just electromobility, particularly CNG and LPG. The fact that these are not included in the RRF has to do with Commission guidance when it comes to the RRF. That's one point. But it also has to do with the fact that parallelly with preparing the RRF, we are also working on the partnership agreement for the EU funds in the new programming period. And obviously, we have to draw pretty clear lines and distribute the funds to make sure that we're not double funding. So some of the areas which are not covered directly in the RRF will be financed through the partnership agreement and the new ESIF funds. What's important to point out that while for RRF we have a budget of approximately 6 billion euro, for the new ESIF funds, that's 13 billion euro. So one of the areas that will receive significant investment from the ESIF funds will be, for example, sustainable public transport in cities, and that includes road transport. So municipalities and their public transportation companies will be able to get support from the ESIF funds to purchase new low emission vehicles. And that can be either electric buses, trolley buses, but also other alternative fuels, for example, LNG and CNG. So that's just a short comment from my side. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I saw a hand. Okay, Dasha Mamrilova, please.
Good afternoon. I hope you can see me and hear me. Thank you very much for being able to participate in this very interesting discussion and to express my pleasure that at the end or in the second half of the discussion also more realistic view on the transformation of transport sector came to this forum and that we are speaking also about other alternatives at electromobility, which is, I think, really great tool for the future. But let's look at the reality, how it is now. A few words about me. I'm coming from NBN Group, which is the biggest Central and Eastern European biofuels holding. And that's why I would like to speak about this other alternatives and about the reality, which is now that we have like about 90% of renewable sources in transport sector are biofuels, whether we speak about first generation or second generation of biofuels, but this is the reality now. And we have several studies available which show that this is still the cheapest alternative for the transitional period and for a midterm future as for the carbon abatement cost. And we have several projects in place how to make some alternatives with higher biofuels blends, with projects which can transform both public transport or railway transport for a lower emission future as well. So we hope that there will be really this value for money principle taken into the consideration, and that it will be really looked at what cost and how realistically fast can we transform the transport sector to zero emission in the future. Thank you.
Yes, I see Gabriela Fischerova raising hand, and if any of the speaker wants to react, wants to comment on that, feel free. But before that, Mrs. Fischerova, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I didn't want to intervene, but some last comments push me to. I have to remind. The problem is that all this issue about the transformation is the transformation from the point of greenhouse gas emissions. So we have to bear this in mind that when we are talking about European funds, European projects, a recovery plan, S-shift or whatever, we have to bear in mind that this money cannot be used for other alternative fuels which are fossil-based, like CNG, LNG, which is a pity in a way, because this would help us at least with the air quality tremendously, and it could be used as a transformational kind of step until we get to zero emission. But this does not mean that we cannot use it. They just cannot be financed from the EU money. So I know that it's difficult to ask someone to pay it from the, let's say, municipality budget, but all the transport projects financed through recovery plan has to be fossil free. That is as a rule. So when we are talking about emissions, we have to distinguish between emissions of greenhouse gases and emissions of pollutants such as PMs and benzoapyrene and so on. Thank you.
Maybe a short comment. I think not only us, not only we are having this discussion, but also a huge discussion is going on in this respect in Brussels, and how much biofuels of which generation should be supported. But I would give maybe one or two speakers or members of the audience a floor if you have any other questions or comments. I think Gabriela Fischer, Mrs. Fischer, you actually you need to lower the hand.
Yeah,
or...
I will.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you raised it again, but is there any other question or comment? Because if not, we are perfectly on time actually, and let me then wrap up. No, there's no hand. Then wrap it up. What GLOBSEC and SEVA actually put together. You will certainly get one pager as kind of outcome and summary paper. We will disseminate this shortly after this event, just to promote continuous discussion. So you will surely get some summary through emails. If there are no other questions, I would really finish this discussion for today. I would like to thank to all speakers for their time and energy to share ideas with us. Of course, I also thank to all people in the audience. Thank you for the discussion. Ferdi, I think we can claim this successful, and I think and I hope that we will continue with similar discussions in the close future.
No, absolutely, and thank you so much, everyone, for your time that you are giving us and the thoughts. And clearly we have a common challenge but many discussion points. So happy to continue that discussion further on. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Patrick, for this excellent moderation on all these discussion points. And we hope to see you in the future. Have a great weekend in the meanwhile.